Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. Extremely excited to record another 2024 NBA mock draft here on the channel. I know you guys have been loving the content as well, so continue smashing that like button. You guys have done a fantastic job doing that. Let's try and set a likes record on today's video. Let's get over 1,000 likes. I think I have a few videos with more than that, but let's try and get at least to 1,000. Then also subscribe to the channel for more content. So without further ado, let's jump in to the mock draft now, and the first overall pick belongs to the Atlanta Hawks, a team that I think really badly needed this selection to kind of jumpstart and reconfigure their roster around presumably Trae Young. Could be DeJounte Murray at this point, but assuming it's Trae Young, I think the real answer here is getting a dynamic big man, someone who can fit on the roster alongside Trae Young while providing a lot of defensive support and becoming a primary chess piece for Quinn Snyder on the defensive end of the floor. That player here first overall is Alex Sarr from the Perth Wildcats. Alex Sarr, during his time in the NBL, really impressed me, most specifically on the defensive end of the floor. And I think if you look at Quinn Snyder's head coaching career, giving him a transformational or defensive chess piece is at the foremost piece of importance for his rosters. Quinn Snyder, I think, an offensive genius. Defensively, sometimes wavers with the success of his teams. You think back to some of those Utah Jazz teams, they really heavily relied on Rudy Gobert to clean up a lot of their messes and put out a lot of their fires. He's even said that himself, that Rudy Gobert made him look like a good defensive coach. And I think his short tenure so far in Atlanta has pointed to some of the flaws, not only with the Hawks roster construction, but with some of the difficulties Quinn Snyder has putting together elite or very good defenses. So getting someone like Sarr, who you can use at the level of the screen, you can use him in drop. He's an excellent weak side shot blocker, just has a ton of length, size, and fluidity for his position. Those things really stand out as something that could give Atlanta a transformational piece. Again, I keep using that word, transformational. That's what Atlanta needs on the defensive end of the floor. They need a transformational big man. They get it here defensively in Alex Sarr, and then offensively, I think his fit with Trae Young could be so dynamic because Sarr is actually a very good pull-up jump shooter, someone who likes to get to touch rather than power finishing at the rim. Now, playing with Trae Young, it's important that he does look to become a better long roller, someone who can finish above the rim more frequently, and getting up above the rim to finish some of those Trae Young lob dunks. But I also think it gives a lot of extra wrinkles into your offense when Trae Young gets blitzed at the level of the screen. You have someone who can be a little bit of a security blanket there, sitting around the nail in the pocket as another playmaker, shooter, scorer out of that type of look. Now, Sarr's not going to walk into the league and average 18, 20 points per game, but I do think there's a pathway where maybe as a rookie averages 11, 12 points a game, and then by year 3, 4 of his career, he's looking like a 15 to 17 point per game guy. And that doesn't sound great. It doesn't sound super thrilling with the first overall pick, but remember, he's a defense first prospect, and in the offensive game, I think there's a lot to work with. He's got ball handling capabilities at 7'1". He can shoot the ball a bit. It's just about putting all of those pieces together in his development, but I do like this pick a ton for Atlanta. I think this is a really great selection for them. A team that badly needed the first overall pick gets a very, very good player at the top spot in this year's draft. Then we move on to pick number 2, and this is where the Washington Wizards are. And I think Wizards fans have a lot of questions right now about who they want to spend the second overall pick on. Feels like every day I'm on Twitter. By the way, links in the description. Go give us a follow for that. The Wizards just, there's a lot of questions about who they're going to take. Some people in the fan base really don't like Zaccharie, Risacher. Some of them kind of want them to spend a pick on a center, even taking Donovan Clingan second overall, which, by the way, I don't think would be a terrible decision. And then also some of them want guards. I know a few other content creators have floated the idea of Isaiah Collier second overall. That's insane to me. I think that would be ridiculous and ludicrous. So what do I actually have the Wizards doing here in this mock draft? I have them going with forward Zaccharie, Risacher from Jailberg, playing in the LNB Pro A League. And I think Risacher, not only has he been on a little bit of a heater here down the stretch of the season, had a fantastic 28-point game where his shooting just reigned supreme. You're looking at Risacher wrong if you're evaluating him solely as a shot creator. And I know right now there's a viral clip going around on Twitter of him failing to create off the dribble, failing to create off the bounce for himself. Listen, first of all, I could put together a highlight reel like that or a low light reel like that for every single prospect in this draft. I could put together every single turnover, every single air ball, every single brick, and I could make all of these prospects look terrible. Okay, so first of all, if you're subscribing to that type of narrative on Zaccharie Risacher, one, you haven't watched enough games of him. You haven't watched enough real film on him because he is a talented player. And people right now are questioning if he can actually attack off the bounce. I think he's actually pretty adept at getting to spots. And I think the one thing about playing in the NBA compared to the LNB Pro A is there's going to be more spacing, which means it's going to be easier to attack off the catch. There's more shooting around him. This is something we even saw with Wembanyama from his last year in the LNB Pro A League, playing for the Mets 92, compared to his first year in San Antonio. Passing became a lot easier because there was more spacing, wide open passing lanes, especially with the gravity Wembanyama had. Now, Risacher doesn't have that same gravity, but that means that with teams not collapsing on him as much as they do on Wembanyama, there's going to be more driving lanes, a little bit more space for him to get into the middle of the floor and comfortably finish. I think that is going to be a challenge for him early in his career. He's not going to adjust to a ton of length and size super well at the rim immediately, but with his size, frame, and skill set from the perimeter as a shooter, there's going to be opportunities and avenues for this kid to grow as a scorer, grow as a playmaker. He is not a finished product, not by any means, but you're drafting him to become a high-level 3-and-D plus wing. And I know people are going to say, you don't want to take a role player second overall. If we went and redrafted Mikal Bridges' draft, he would probably go in the top 3 or 4 picks, okay? The hope here is Zaccharie Risacher can turn into that kind of player where he guards the other team's best guy night in, night out. He provides spacing, the ability to attack closeouts, and have some secondary or tertiary scoring upside to him. He's not going to be an all-star probably. He's not going to be a superstar, but I do think he's going to be a very good long-term player and a player who is going to help the Washington Wizards a ton going forward, giving them some more versatility on the wings with great positional size. Then we move on to pick number 3, and this is the Houston Rockets here. This pick is another one that has been very widely discussed, especially on social media. Again, link to my Twitter is in the description. The Rockets, there's this misconstruction right now about a specific prospect, and that is who I'm mocking them here. 3rd overall, I have the Houston Rockets selecting guard Reed Sheppard from Kentucky. And there's a lot of bad narrative right now out on social media saying, why would the Rockets spend the third overall pick on fit? Why would they take this kid 3rd overall? He's not big enough, this, that, and the other thing. And then they highlight, you don't draft for fit in the top 3. Here's what I'm going to say. Not only does Reed Sheppard perfectly fit what Houston needs, which is another creator, another shooter, someone who can really shoot. That's a big difference. He's not like a Cam Whitmore shooter where he's confident, but maybe not, it'll go in. I'm telling you, he's a laser. Okay, that's what this kid is. He's a laser, and the thing is, it's not just fit. There's a very good chance he's a top 3 player overall in this draft class. I have him top 3 on my big board right now. I'm a big believer in his game. I think he's going to be a significantly better Austin Reeves. I think he can toggle between on-ball, off-ball responsibilities like Reeves has done. Reed Sheppard, for me, kind of comp him to Mike Conley in some ways. Now, he's less of a point guard, more of a combo guard than Conley, but as Conley has aged in his career, you've seen him really accept that combo guard role early in his time in Memphis, playing next to Rudy Gay, Tony Allen, Marc Gasol. He had a lot more responsibilities as a true point guard, but as he's aged, his time in Utah, his time in Minnesota, he's been phenomenal both on and off the basketball, kind of working into pick and rolls with Rudy Gobert, also playing off of Anthony Edwards, off of Karl Anthony Towns, off of Donovan Mitchell back in his Utah days. I think Reed Sheppard has all of those same qualities where he comes in, he can be a ball handler, pick and roll player for you, he can create out his own offense. I think just like Mike Conley does, a lot of Conley's three-point looks come out of the pick and roll. I think Reed Sheppard can create for himself in the same way, but then also I think he's even a better off-ball player than Conley because he's got just more raw shooting gravity. Teams are going to be afraid to leave him both in the corner and above the break. I think that's a really important dynamic here for Houston. If you put Reed Sheppard on the weak side wing with Alperen Şengün posting up, it's going to be a tough challenge for a team to effectively guard that, because what do? Do you blitz from the opposite side corner? Well, then that opens up cutting lanes. Do you blitz off of the weak side wing, which leaves Reed Sheppard open for 3? Do you blitz strong side, which makes passing a lot easier? That could be Jalen Green feeding Şengün in the post, and all of a sudden you're getting your best players involved in a 2-man game that has accurate and necessary spacing around it. So that's where Sheppard really comes into play here. Not only does he fit Houston, which is a super important part of drafting to begin with, especially for a team like Houston, who is so close to being a real playoff team, drafting for fit makes sense, but it's not just fit here. Sheppard might just flat out be a top 3 player in this year's draft. I like his game a lot. I think this is a home run pick for Houston. I would give this an A grade on draft night. Have no problems with that. I might even give it an A plus, to be completely honest with you. I just like this pick a ton, and I think the Rockets get way better making this type of selection on draft night. Pick number 4, we're on to the San Antonio Spurs here now. And Spurs fans, I think you're going to like this mock draft quite a bit for San Antonio. I've been reading all of the comments on the channel. I know what Spurs fans want. I know what Spurs fans think might happen on draft night. And I am taking that into account a little bit, especially with how I've been looking at the mock drafts, seeing what I think some teams would take. There is some smaller guards that maybe they would fall a little bit if San Antonio didn't take them 4th overall. So instead, the Spurs are going to take a guy who I'm almost certain will not fall to pick number 8, and that is guard Stephon Castle from UConn. Now, in the world that he doesn't work out for a bunch of teams because he wants to just be a point guard, maybe he would fall to pick number 8, but the Spurs don't take that gamble here with this selection. They select Castle 4th overall to be a main primary ball handler backcourt piece for this Spurs roster alongside Devin Vassell. And I think one of the great things about Stephon Castle, he is a really dynamic defensive player who can guard all across the floor. You can put him on point guards, you can put him on wings because of his size, and I think that positional flexibility defensively will be huge in making Devin Vassell's life easier on the defensive end of the floor, making Victor Wembanyama's job a lot easier, not making him responsible for every single player on the floor all at one time, even though Wemby might be capable of that because of how dynamic defensively he is and how awesome and elite his length has really translated to the NBA. I think for the Spurs, though, if you want to build a really great team, a team that has a chance at winning multiple championships, it's not just about offensive firepower around Wembanyama. It's about putting some really strong defensive pieces next to him as well, so that you can at times choke other teams out of games by suffocating them at the end, or having enough offensive talent as well around some of your defensive pieces to still outscore teams when maybe you're not having the best defensive night. So I think for San Antonio in this mock draft, looking for that versatility, getting a really talented offensive player after getting a really great defensive player here in Stephon Castle would be awesome. And I think Castle's an underrated offensive player as well. I think he can handle the ball a lot better than we got to see at UConn. I think he's very creative, very shifty with his handle. I think his size is going to present some matchup problems for some of the smaller teams around the league. And he gives you, again, another physical body to get on the glass, make some extra plays, make some winning plays. That's really at the heart of Stephon Castle's profile as a prospect, is winner. He did a lot of winning things. He sacrificed his own game for the team at UConn. I think a lot of the UConn Huskies did that, but Castle most specifically probably sacrificed the most offensively, and I think can give San Antonio a real burst of juice that they could really use on their roster. Now, a quick word from today's sponsor. OddsJam is the top choice for data-driven sports betting, tracking over 260 sports books in real time. With OddsJam, you'll become a profitable sports bettor using strategies similar to those employed by successful investors and traders. How does it work? Thanks to the OddsJam arbitrage tool, which identifies discrepancies in sports betting lines across the market, this tool finds arbitrage betting opportunities, guaranteeing risk-free profits by spotting these differences. You can even bet on both sides of the market and still make a profit. But that's not all. OddsJam also offers a positive EV calculator to help you optimize your bet sizes and a bet tracker to monitor your profits across all your sportsbook accounts. By using OddsJam, you'll bet smarter and more responsibly, leading to long-term profitability. Plus, they're so confident in their product that they even offer a 7-day free trial. Ready to try it out? Use code UTILITY for a 35% discount on your first month. Again, use code UTILITY for a 35% discount on your first month. Now moving on to pick number 5, we have the Detroit Pistons here. And with this selection, I think the Pistons are such an interesting team to talk about. I would really not mind a trade down for them. There's a few players I would really like them to select, But in this mock draft, it's not what I would do. It's what I expect these teams to value, what I expect them to target. So 5th overall, I have the Pistons selecting forward Matas Buzelis from G League Ignite. And listen, there's the owner to agent relationships, the Tellem family. That is its own problem on its own, okay? But they do have a new president of basketball operations in Tidjane Langdon. I think that was a good hire for this organization. Moving out of Troy Weaver to Langdon, I think, was a really good step in the right direction for Detroit. They just really improved their basketball front office, in my opinion. Now, for Buzelis, why does he make some sense here? 5th overall for Detroit. From a positional standpoint, they need one of these hybrid forwards who can guard a couple different bigger wings in this league. They need someone who has a little bit more length, stands about 6'10". His arms aren't the longest. He doesn't have this crazy plus wingspan, but he's got really respectable size, length, and athleticism for his position. Those are some of the selling points here for Detroit. Someone who can handle the ball a little bit, make some plays with a live handle, and score the basketball a bit as well, especially in transition. That's where Buzelis finds himself most comfortable. Now, for me, if you've been watching for the channel for a while, you know I don't really care about position as much as I do about skill set. Everyone talks about fit as, oh, they need a point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center. I'm sorry, it's not 2004 anymore, okay? You don't need every single position. You need every single kind of skill set. And Detroit is really lacking shooting. I think that they need someone who is quick off of the bounce, like a Kyrie Irving. Obviously, you're not getting Kyrie Irving in this draft, but what I mean here is someone who plays off the catch well. Someone like a Rob Dillingham would have made some sense. And I know people are going to say, wait, what? The Pistons already have all these guards. Listen, I don't care about the position. I care about the skills, and I care about the play style. And Buzelis, there is one thing I really like about his game and his fit next to Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey. He works off the baseline. So from a positioning standpoint, on the actual basketball court, while Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey kind of dominate the point and the wings in terms of where they typically space to, having someone like Buzelis who is accustomed to working off the baseline, likes to get to his little turnaround jumper there, that does fit into Detroit's roster. But I do think the lack of a quick first step, some of the issues I have with Buzelis as a prospect makes me not love this pick for Detroit, to be completely honest with you. I know some Pistons fans are not going to be happy with me saying that, but this is the reality here. I'm mocking what I think will happen. We've talked about a bunch of different scenarios for Detroit throughout the year, but I just keep coming back to the likelihood that Buzelis lands 5th overall with Detroit, whether I like it or not. Number 6 now, we have the Charlotte Hornets, and I just want to say, if you're a Hornets fan, you've got to be super excited. Now, I know you've sold off some pieces of the trade deadline, probably took a slight step back in terms of your overall roster, but you picked up a couple of first-round picks in the future in 2027 that I think could be really valuable for this team, whether that's added trade flexibility, a couple of extra draft picks on draft night in 2027, and I still think the Hornets, their core pieces are intact with Mark Williams, depending on how you view him with his health, and obviously we have a new front office, new decision makers there in Charlotte, so I don't think they're necessarily tied to Mark Williams, but LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller are really the staple figurehead pieces there for this roster moving forward, and they have a chance here to add just, I think, a very good player, a very underrated player in this draft cycle. And I know some Hornets fans might not even love this pick, but I'm telling you, it's a very, very, very good pick, and I think it is one that is on the table for Charlotte to decide on right now and to consider. 6th overall, I have the Hornets selecting center Donovan Clingan from UConn, and part of why I love this selection so much for Charlotte, size always wins in the NBA. This has been true since the 1960s, the 1970s. Heck, it's been true since the Minneapolis Lakers were hanging banners with George Mikan. Having big players, having a lot of size, length, and athleticism on the floor is always a good thing in the NBA. And I think for Charlotte specifically, this is an obvious decision for them. Getting Donovan Clingan in the building, I just think makes a ton of sense. Whether you like Mark Williams or not, I still think Mark Williams could be a good player. So instead of having a really good center and no real consistent backup behind him, why don't we just go and have 48 minutes of great center play? Donovan Clingan, I think his passing is extremely underrated. He's one of the best screen setters, if not the best screen setter in this year's draft. I know some people are going to roll their eyes at that. That is an extremely important facet. You want to know who has the highest individual offensive rating in NBA history? Rudy Gobert. And he's not the most talented offensive player, I can tell you that, but what he does do is he sets extremely great screens, and he positions his body extremely well to leverage his rim gravity. And if you look at a player like Donovan Clingan, He's a better passer than Rudy Gobert. I think he's got similar to better touch than Rudy Gobert. I think he can finish above the rim, not as well as Gobert, but in a similar capacity. And then also Clingan provides some of that true anchor potential. Now, he's not as mobile, in my opinion, laterally as Gobert is, and I know some people are going to roll their eyes at that too. If you turn on the tape, especially that first round against the Phoenix Suns, Gobert was guarding out in space with Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and Kevin Durant, and he won a lot of those matchups. So, you know, if you want to sit there and say Gobert's not a great player, you're just not watching the game closely enough, to be honest. Donovan Clingan is going to be awesome. This is like one of my safest picks in this year's draft. If you draft Donovan Clingan, you're going to be extremely happy with the result. Kid's really good at basketball. Point blank, he's huge. He's going to protect the rim. He's going to shut out the paint. And for a team like Charlotte, who your point guard right now, LaMelo Ball, is like a revolving door. He doesn't stay in front of anybody. He is probably one of the worst keep ball in front defenders in the entire NBA. Having someone like Clingan behind him who is huge, can take up a ton of space in the paint, and can deter people from shooting once they get there, that's going to be an extremely valuable asset for Charlotte. And then guess what? If Clingan gets into foul trouble, you bring in Mark Williams. If Mark Williams gets into foul trouble, you bring in Clingan. Like, it's unbelievable to me how good that center pairing could be, of giving 48 minutes of really just great center play to the Charlotte Hornets for the next 5 to 7 years. I don't see a problem with that at all. Then we move on to pick number 7, and we have the Portland Trailblazers here now at this spot, and I'm excited about Portland's future. I am. I think that Scoot Henderson is going to take a giant step forward in year 2, and then an even bigger step forward in year 3. I think he's going to turn into the player I've predicted him to become for a long time. I've loved him as a draft prospect for a while, and I still think if you're a Portland Trailblazers fan, you've got to be excited about the long-term future here for your organization. You have a lot of quality players right now. You have some veterans to trade, and you have the 7th overall pick as well as the 14th overall pick to add some talent on this roster as well. So 7th overall, I have Portland selecting forward/guard Ron Holland, and I think with his size, the way he measured in at the combine, this is a legitimate wing type of prospect for you. You're putting him alongside Shaedon Sharpe. You have two extremely athletic, dynamic wings. Now, they are very different. Shaedon Sharpe, I think, a little bit more skilled with his handle right now, a little bit more skilled as a shot maker, shot creator, and also, I think, just flat out a better above-the-rim finisher. But what do I think Ron Holland does better than Shaedon Sharpe is draw, initiate contact, get to the free throw line. And I think it's just going to put a little bit of a different pressure on teams against Portland. And there's a few different ways to look at your roster construction. I think shooting is going to be an important thing for Portland to value over time. I don't have them getting that here 7th overall, with Holland's game being more drive-centric and downhill pressure being at the heart of his player DNA. But for Portland, I do think that once Scoot Henderson puts defenses into rotation, once he gets his feet in the paint, something he did very well, in my opinion, as a true rookie, someone who I think generated a lot of collapsing defenses, kicking it out to guys like Shaedon Sharpe and Ron Holland. Not only are you going to get them open three-point looks, but you're also giving them opportunities to attack closeouts frequently. So that's where Holland's downhill athleticism and Sharpe's downhill athleticism is going to do wonders for Portland, because you're going to get this dynamic drive and kick game where if Holland and Sharpe can really grow and blossom as playmakers, then all of a sudden you're going to have a fantastic you're going to have a fantastic team with just a lot of on-ball talent, a lot of downhill slashing capabilities, and then surrounding that with shooting, I think would be at the forefront of discussion for Portland going forward. They do have pick 14 in this draft. They also have other needs, though, to address as well. So we're going to talk about all the different possibilities for Portland, but I think Ron Holland alongside Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe gives you this really interesting dynamic trio with a lot of downhill rim gravity, a lot of downhill attack in their player DNAs, and I think Holland's going to be a fantastic get for whoever gets him, but I think specifically Portland, you get a defensive player as well here who can help you on that end of the floor, something they still badly need. Pick number 8, the San Antonio Spurs, back on the clock here now, and remember earlier I talked about the dynamism that they could add in this draft by getting an elite defensive prospect in Stephon Castle, and then following it up 8th overall with someone who's maybe a little bit more offensive oriented and maybe a smaller guard who other teams just couldn't afford to take. Portland, I'm just not sure they're in a spot to take a smaller guard. I could have seen Charlotte doing it, but I pass on that in this mock draft. 8th overall, I have the San Antonio Spurs selecting guard Rob Dillingham from Kentucky. So not only do they get Stephon Castle as a primary ball handler, initiator of offense, but you get an elite shot maker, a dynamic ball handler as well in Rob Dillingham, who can, in my opinion, coexist off of the basketball extremely well. I think his shooting profile and his quick twitch decision making, his ability to attack gaps and get downhill is going to be very valuable there in San Antonio. But I also think, just flat out looking at his skill set, his ability, this gives you another guy who can really initiate your offense when Stephon Castle's either out of the game or off of the basketball. Dillingham's ability to initiate in the pick and roll, I think one of the most underrated aspects of his game is his passing. And people, for some reason there's a narrative right now, and I don't know if it comes from watching too many highlights or what, but they look at him as like a bench spark plug scorer. And while he has that type of capability, for sure he could be someone who comes into the game off the bench and give you 15 points a night probably. I do think there's more to his game than that. I think he can play in the pick and roll. I think he can be a point guard at the NBA level. Going back to his time in the Overtime Elite program with the Cold Hearts, he was the point guard. And he took Amen Thompson and Ausar Thompson, the City Reapers, down the wire in the championship game there for Overtime Elite while he was a year younger than both of those prospects, significantly smaller. He is somebody who I think can just be a true offensive engine, true offensive generator. So not only do the Spurs get two different type of guards here in this draft, but it also gives them a chance that if one of these two guys don't pan out, you're probably still walking out of this draft with a really, really good long-term point guard, whether that's Castle or Dillingham, that's yet to be seen. I like both of them. I think they're both going to be quality players in the NBA, but I especially believe in Dillingham's ability to create offense, both for himself and for others, and that's why San Antonio here, getting a dynamic offensive player with a creative handle, you can't lock him up in space. I think that's where the value really comes into play here for the Spurs 8th overall. Then we move on to pick number 9, and that is the Memphis Grizzlies here, who are probably bummed to see Donovan Clingan off the board. And they become a really tricky team to mock for, especially with guard Nikola still on board. Do I see them taking that type of player, that type of point guard, as a backup? And I'm just not exactly sold on that. Now, I'm not saying Topic would be bad for Memphis, but based on how they want to play, their team construct, the way that they want to get to the offensive glass, I just don't know if there's a role for Topic, given the fact that they have Marcus Smart, Desmond Bane, and John Morant on roster right now. The Grizzlies are definitely a team that could look to move up in the draft to try and get Donovan Clingan, but in the event Clingan's off the board, maybe they just go with the next best available center, and that is center Kel'el Ware from Indiana. I like this kid's game a lot too. People are going to say that this feels a little bit like a reach. They're going to say, wow, that's kind of a high range or high-end outcome here for Kel'el Ware. Maybe it is, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter where a player gets drafted. I know that's going to sound crazy. It matters what the outcome is of his quality of play for the team. And I think if Memphis has been watching this postseason, if you've been watching the Dallas Mavericks, someone like Derek Lively, someone who has a very similar build and makeup to Kel'el Ware, a lot of length, a lot of size, rim protection prowess, he has found a ton of success in the NBA playoffs playing off of a premier guard like Luka Doncic. Now, Memphis has their own premier guard in John Morant. They also have an extremely talented roster around that with Bane, Smart, Jaren Jackson Jr. Obviously, there's a lot of hope for G.G. Jackson to become a key piece there. I'm a little more skeptical, but the Grizzlies getting Kel'el Ware here, 9th overall, gives them another above-the-rim finisher. It gives them another screen and roll guy. He's also been an elite post-up player at the college game. Now, I don't expect that to really translate to the NBA a ton, but having someone who's capable and comfortable having the ball in the post maybe opens up certain things in your offense. If you want to find some cutting opportunities for John Morant, maybe there's ways to work that into play here. And then also just getting more true size. Size wins in the NBA. That's been really one of the main components of this mock draft. Having more talented size is always good. Kel'el Ware, very good with both his right and left hand around the rim. He's got pretty good touch. He can finish above the rim. He's super athletic, can block shots with the best of them. Now, is he a true anchor? Probably not, but that's where the combination of Ware and Jaren Jackson Jr. defensively gives you this elite shot blocking tandem that other teams are just going to have real struggles going up against. So I think for the Grizzlies here, 9th overall, Kel'el Ware becomes maybe a little bit of a high selection for him, but just flat out a really good player and addressing a position of need that I think is very obvious and evident on their roster. And Ware, probably like Lively, comes off the bench, similar to how Lively's coming off the bench behind Gafford. Clark probably is your starter there in Memphis, but Ware could give you real quality minutes off the bench in his rookie campaign. Pick number 10, we have the Utah Jazz here now. And for Utah specifically, I think there are a lot of different ways to operate here. But one thing that I haven't loved about Utah is just the absence of a true lead dynamic playmaker, someone who is an elite facilitator. And if you look at the rest of their roster, I think that's what they're missing offensively. Keyonte George, a very good shot maker, shot creator. I think there's a lot of upside for him to continue growing into, but I just don't view him as a true floor general, point guard, lead decision maker type. I think he can be your secondary playmaker, secondary initiator, and I think that's the role that's going to be most comfortable for him as well, giving him opportunities to have the ball, but not all game long, not super reliant on that. When you look at Lauri Markkanen, over 80% of his field goals are assisted, so getting him a dynamic elite passer could make a ton of sense. Walker Kessler, I think, very similar to what we just talked about with Rudy Gobert, someone who positions himself well, doesn't have a ton of offensive talent, but with his sheer size can be a rim gravity force. John Collins, if he's still there in Utah, obviously an elite lob threat. This Jazz team has some players who are more qualified as play finishers, in my opinion. So you need that initial playmaker. And 10th overall of the Utah Jazz selecting guard Nikola Topic from Red Star. And I think this is one of the better fits in the draft if he falls all the way to pick number 10. The Jazz, who really badly need a point guard after trading away Mike Conley, there's just been kind of that absence at the point guard spot, both from a ball security standpoint, way too many turnovers, especially early in the year for Utah this year, as they were kind of going through lumps of teaching Keyonte George the point guard spot. They just had their struggles, right? With the overall ball security, avoiding turnovers, taking care of possessions. Nikola Topic is going to bring that into the NBA, and he's somebody who I think has a lot of game in a lot of different ways than just passing. That's obviously been his primary skill set I focus on. I think he's a very special passer, someone who has eyes on the back of his head, just reads the whole floor, seems very under control with the ball in his hands, but he's also, I think, a very underrated finisher at the rim. Now at Red Star, we haven't gotten to see him in a high volume yet. His numbers don't look great so far, but from his time playing for Mega Meese this year, Mega Basket, he has really impressed me. Getting to the rim, I think he's very, very smart and decisive in short areas, which makes him able to leverage his sheer size as a 6'6" point guard over smaller defenders. And with that, I think his ability as a passer is going to help defenders at bay a little bit. Do you want to help off the strong side corner against Nikola Topic? Probably not. Helping off the weak side corner is even going to be a little bit of a dangerous game because of Topic's size and passing vision. And then when it comes to the actual rim protectors for teams, if you get a rolling big man like a Walker Kessler, like a John Collins, for Topic to lob the ball to or to fit into the pocket, it's going to put defending big men in an interesting spot of, okay, do I commit to Topic here? Do I not? How do I want to go about guarding him? That's why Utah here, I think, is getting a very good player because he's going to be able to leverage his size and his playmaking feel to become a little bit of a scorer as well. I think this is one of the best fits for him. I think this is one of the best fits for Utah. Overall, it's a really good selection, and I think Topic landing with the Jazz would really be able to maximize a lot of what he brings to the table. Pick number 11, we're on to the Chicago Bulls here now. A team that, honestly, I do have a lot of belief in their long-term guard play. Kobe White just took a huge step forward this year. I think a big part of that was also the Zach LaVine injury, kind of opening up a runway for him to have the ball more consistently, more frequently, more on-ball reps, and it also sounds like LaVine very possibly could get salary dumped this offseason, which I would not blame Chicago for doing. In fact, if they do that, I think they would end up on the long-term better outcome from that. So we'll see what happens with Chicago. Could be a fascinating long-term situation to monitor. Obviously, DeRozan's a free agent. My current expectation is he is back in Chicago. So 11th overall, we're looking for a player with some long-term upside, someone who can be a complementary piece to their existing core and some of their older players as well, like Vucevic. 11th overall, I have the Bulls going with forward Cody Williams from Colorado, and I think Cody Williams is one of the most misunderstood prospects in this year's draft. From a sheer creation standpoint, he stands out to me as somebody who could have a tremendous high ceiling upside that if everything goes right in his development, if he blossoms as a ball handler, takes some meaningful steps forward in that area with his comfortability on the ball, and if he takes some steps forward as a live ball decision maker, as a playmaker, you're getting a star with this pick if he takes those steps forward. Again, really important. If he takes those steps forward, if he grows as a shot maker a bit as well from the perimeter, you're getting a dynamic downhill threat. At about 6'8", he's going to leverage his size and his ability. He's got a very slender frame, so he's able to kind of slide by defenders and fit into tight gaps a little bit easier, a little bit quicker. Now he's going to put muscle on at the NBA level. He's going to have to, but I think his overall body of work at Colorado was very impressive. He got to the rim a ton. He got his feet in the paint a ton. That's something typically when I'm watching guards play, that's what stands out to me, from the elite guards to the not so elite guards. And Cody Williams was getting to the rim at the volume of some of the elite guards. And that's what really stands out to me for him, is the ability to put pressure on defenses, force them into rotations. And if he takes meaningful steps again in some of those other areas, some of his weaknesses right now, he goes from being just a very good wing to an elite wing or a great wing. And I think for Chicago, a team that right now, if you ask me what the long-term outlook is for the Bulls, I'm not super optimistic. But if they get someone like Cody Williams, and if he hits, he could be a very key piece for them long-term, kind of turning the ship around, getting them right back on track. I think Cody Williams is the upside grab, very much worth taking if you're the Chicago Bulls. Pick number 12, the Oklahoma City Thunder here now on the clock. This pick, of course, comes from the Houston Rockets in the Chris Paul-Russell Westbrook swap from about a half decade ago or so. And now OKC's in a spot where they get to address something that I think is still a big need on their roster. And I want to highlight Isaiah Joe. I think Isaiah Joe is such an important player for Oklahoma City. Not only has he taken important strides forward in his own career in some of the areas that were weaknesses when he came out of Arkansas, but he also found himself an opportunity to be a really reliable floor spacer for a team that is really built on drive and kick basketball. And I think for Oklahoma City, it's about getting more floor spacing, another dangerous shooter to put around Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren, and Jalen Williams. And with the 12th overall pick, they're going to be able to accomplish that here with forward/guard Dalton Knecht from Tennessee. Now, hear me out, Oklahoma City fans. I know one of the biggest flaws on the roster right now is size in the front court. I know getting a power forward, someone who can athletically keep up with other bigs and protect the rim a bit, offer more size and defensive acumen. I think that definitely does make some sense here for 12th overall for Oklahoma City. But I also think if you look at their offense and the way that the Dallas Mavericks really disrespected them in the second round, the Mavericks' bet against OKC was that players like Lou Dort, Josh Giddey, and a few others would not comfortably shoot the ball well enough to hurt them. And as a byproduct of that, that resulted in Dallas putting their centers a lot of the time on some of those other players. Against Dalton Knecht, you're not going to want to do that. And you might say, okay, well, what's the benefit then of not having other teams put their centers on our guards and wings? Then that means they have to guard Chet Holmgren, who is extremely quick, can handle the basketball, can get downhill as a driver, but can also shoot it. If you have other teams having to defend him with centers, then all of a sudden, his value skyrockets. This is the same thing Dallas struggled with maximizing Kristaps Porzingis. They played him for, I don't understand any reason. There's no reason that they did this, but they played him as a power forward. They started Dwight Powell at center, and when they got into the playoffs, teams like the LA Clippers back in the day would switch everything between Porzingis and Doncic, and the two of them never found a rhythm with their two-man game because teams would eliminate some of the threat there from the pick and pop, pick and roll combination. If you're Oklahoma City, putting your roster forward, building out your offense really relies on making teams guard Chet Holmgren with centers. That's how Indiana operates. After getting Pascal Siakam, there was no place for teams to put their center other than on Miles Turner. And if you look at the playoffs he just had, he was fantastic and shot a ton of open shots because of that. Against Milwaukee, they destroyed Brook Lopez. Against the Knicks, Miles Turner got a ton of open looks. And even against the Celtics, they were able to find and generate clean looks for Miles Turner pretty consistently. I think for OKC, if you want to weaponize your roster, you need to put more shooting on the floor. You need to stretch teams out even a little bit more than they already do, putting more reliable shooting on the court. Someone like Dalton Knecht who can do it off of movement and off of standstill and can also create a little bit off the bounce. He just fits perfectly into what Oklahoma City, in my opinion, is still lacking offensively. Yes, it doesn't help your defense as much as a power forward would, but I think it dynamically helps your offense a ton, not only just with his own shooting and volume and floor spacing, but it also puts Chet Holmgren in more advantage and more advantageous matchups going into the postseason next year. Then at pick number 13, we have the Sacramento Kings, and this is one of my favorite teams to talk about. There's a chance that they use this pick on draft night as a trade chip. Last year, they traded out of the first round completely to dump Richaun Holmes' contract. That allowed them to extend and sign Domantas Sabonis long-term. I think that was a very smart decision for them. Now, 13th overall here, Sacramento's in a spot where they're going to be able to add some talent if they do keep this pick. And with the likelihood that Malik Monk leaves in free agency, and some of the needs on the roster, I've been looking back and forth between guys like Jared McCain and Devin Carter, and I think both of them make a lot of sense for different reasons. Jared McCain makes a lot of sense as a floor spacer, someone who can fit really well off of Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox and their two-man game, but my pick here in this mock draft is guard Devin Carter from Providence, and part of the reason why I think he makes a lot of sense here is with them losing Malik Monk, not only do you need someone who can, I think, coexist off of Sabonis and Fox, but you just need another ounce of shot creation. And that's what Devin Carter really did a ton for the Friars this past year. A lot of pull-up jump shots, a lot of self-creation, and I think him translating into the NBA, he's got the ability, he's got the size, skill set, and mindset to be a good off-ball player. He's not huge, but he's going to stand at about 6'4", so he's a prototypically sized guard. I think probably would come off the bench for Sacramento just like Malik Monk did. And then off of that, it gives you a guard to back up De'Aaron Fox, create some offense with Fox off the floor. And I think Carter's game, once you scale him down into the NBA with a little bit more spacing around him and some better playmakers like a Domantas Sabonis, I think his life gets a little bit easier. You're going to see that efficiency uptick just a little bit as well. And then I think Carter's going to be able to come off of some of those DHOs there in Sacramento and rise up into 15 to 18 foot pull-up jump shots, find his looks pretty easily, pretty seamlessly in Sacramento's offense, which again is very zoom based and obviously play with a lot of tempo and pace. I think it's going to be a fantastic fit for the Kings. They run more zoom than anybody else. I think Devin Carter is somebody who can create his own offense outside of zoom, but in zoom it's going to put him in spots where he's going to be able to thrive pretty consistently, in my opinion, especially with Sabonis' screen setting. So I think this is a really good fit for the Kings. I think it's a great fit for Devin Carter. And defensively, he's no slouch either. He competes on that end of the floor, does a good job staying attached to his primary matchup and challenges shots at the rim and on the perimeter. So I think all in all, a very good get for Sacramento. Helps them on both sides of the floor and kind of erases some of the loss that losing Malik Monk in free agency definitely is. Pick number 14, the Blazers back on the clock here now. Remember, 7th overall, we went with guard/forward Ron Holland. Now 14th overall, with this pick coming from the Golden State Warriors, they have a really good chance to add another asset to their already pretty deep collection of assets and young players on their roster. 14th overall, I have them going with forward Tidjane Salaun from Cholet, another LNB Pro A prospect in the lottery here. And Salaun's somebody who, it's an upside grab. He's not a sure thing. He's not a safe, no-risk decision here because there are still a lot of flaws in his game. He has not shot the ball extremely well from three. He shoots it very well from the top of the key, funny enough, but not really from the corners. Hasn't shot it very well from the wings either up to this point in time. And he kind of shoots a moon ball, to be honest. That's the way I've been describing it throughout this year. Shoots the ball with a lot of high arc, which isn't a terrible thing. And I mean, Dirk Nowitzki really mastered that during his playing days. For Salaun specifically, I just don't know how reliable that jump shot's going to be. And this is where if he finds his jump shot, he finds an actual rhythm with it and becomes a good NBA shooter, Portland absolutely nails this draft, getting Holland's downhill pressure and a four-man in Salaun who can defend, super athletic, quick, can move his feet really well, but then can also shoot it. That's where like the value really comes in because he does have a good volume of shooting from his LNB Pro A days so far. He's been shooting a good number of shots. He has a lot of reps playing off the ball, working as a catch and shoot guy. Now it's just about finding that efficiency, that continued success, and that's where the upside lies here with him. If he's hitting his shots, if he becomes a very good shooter at the NBA level, he's an awesome pickup. My comp for him right now is a little PJ Washington, where if the shot's on, there's a lot of value. If the shot's not on, the value is not as evident. Now, like PJ Washington, he's quick downhill, can handle the ball just a little bit, can attack closeouts, get to spots on the floor, offers similar length and athleticism defensively. Again, this is not the type of player that I'm typically enamored with. My consideration on their impact on winning isn't as severe as other people seem to think. Power forwards who maybe aren't the best three-point shooters are probably one of the least valued archetypes in the NBA. But again, if Salaun really does progress as a shooter, becomes more reliable in that area, that's where you find that value. So I don't want to completely discredit him as a prospect. I'm a little bit lower on him than others, but I understand the perceived upside in him with the athletic traits, the physical prowess he possesses, and then if that shot does come around to become a respectable NBA three-point shot, you've got a great pickup here if you're Portland. Pick number 15, we're on to Heat culture here with the Miami Heat at this spot. And this is a team that still just needs more raw talent, I think. Obviously, they were really banged up this past playoffs. No Jimmy Butler, Terry Rozier is injured. Just, they weren't themselves, right? So you can only put so much stock into this past playoff run. But I do want to point out that the fact that they aren't a good regular season team constantly puts them in a spot where they can't afford to be injured in the first round of the playoffs because they're playing a team like the Boston Celtics. They're playing a number 1 or number 2 seed year in, year out because they can't avoid the play-in. They have a lot of work to do to become a more respectable regular season team. So this pick I do think is very important to them. I have them selecting forward Tyler Smith because one of the flaws with this roster, they just need a little bit more size and a little bit more athleticism on the floor. Right now, you think Bam Adebayo, he's someone who offensively wins with his touch. Jimmy Butler really likes that mid-range pull-up jump shot. Tyler Hero is exclusively a jump shooter for the most part. You also look at Duncan Robinson, obviously, for the most part, exclusively a jump shooter. Took some important strides forward in his game this year. I think really showcased himself the best he ever has this year. But I think getting some more raw athleticism in the building for Miami does make some sense. Tyler Smith, somebody who, when he's in really great shape, can play way above the rim. He's got good downhill speed for a forward, and somebody who also 40% of his three-point attempts for the G League Ignite program came from three. Now, I'd like to see more of his shot attempts also coming at the rim. Did settle for some mid-range pull-ups that, to me, I just don't know if those shots are really going to be there for him at the NBA level. I'm not sure if teams are going to say, yeah, we want Tyler Smith taking a bunch of 15 to 17-foot jump shots. It kind of reminds me of Rui Hachimura in a way. When Rui came out of Gonzaga, it was very clear that was where he was comfortable. He was a mid-post player, someone who, like Carmelo Anthony, would like to get to jab steps and shoot pull-up twos. And the issue with that is in the NBA, you're just not going to have your third, fourth, fifth best player shooting those types of shots. It's been a real adjustment period for Rui. Kind of figured it out once he got to LA a bit. And I think that's a credit to the coaching there by Darvin Ham, getting the most out of Rui Hachimura the way that he did. Now, obviously, Darvin Ham not with the Lakers anymore, and he catches a lot of flack. And some of it's deserved, for sure. So I'm not sitting here saying that Darvin Ham was an elite coach or anything like that. But I think 15th overall here, getting Tyler Smith in the building for Miami, this gives you another player who I think can survive off the ball, function as a spot-up guy, but gives you a dynamic transition threat, gives you someone who can attack closeouts, get to the rim. You notice in this draft, I keep saying the words attack closeouts and play off the ball. That's where the value is in this draft. You're getting guys who aren't primary initiators a ton. You're not getting a ton of primary creators for offense, but what you are getting is a bunch of players with really awesome traits that can make them fantastic fits around your existing stars. Miami already has a couple of stars. Now you need a player who can fit off of them, provide athleticism, spacing, and rim pressure, and that's what Tyler Smith does here, 15th overall. At pick number 16, the 76ers here on the clock, and this player that I'm going to mock to them I think just makes a ton of sense. I think this is the floor for him on draft night. That player is guard Jared McCain from Duke. I think he is just a tremendous prospect from a shooting profile specifically. Stands out to me as someone who is going to create a ton of spacing, create a ton of offense off of the catch. And I think for the Sixers in general, something that they need around Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey long-term is a cheap contract who can space the floor for them and provide some secondary offensive creation as well. For the Sixers, that's probably actually going to look more like tertiary offensive creation because of how much Embiid has the ball in the middle of the floor, how hard it is to double him in that spot. That's where someone like Jared McCain becomes valuable. You place him in the corner, you place him on the wing. If you want to try and double Joel Embiid at the free throw line, good luck with that, because Jared McCain's going to be one pass away. He's going to be ready to knock down open jump shots. He's a very, very good jump shooter. I have no concerns about his jump shot translating to the NBA level. And he also can handle the ball in the pick and roll a bit. So when Maxi's off the floor, I could see Jared McCain being another playmaker. Not saying he would be the backup point guard. I don't see that. I think he's a combo guard. So you'd probably need another backup point guard on the roster. My assumption is Kyle Lowry's back in Philadelphia. So can Kyle Lowry and Jared McCain coexist? I definitely think that they can. So this is a very good selection here for the Sixers. They have a ton of cap space. If they keep this pick and find a way to get cost-controlled production from a player, Jared McCain is one of the best options for them in this draft. And I think getting him 16th overall is a surefire, awesome selection, one that just makes a ton of sense for the Sixers, in my opinion. Pick number 17, the LA Lakers here now. This pick officially belongs to the Los Angeles Lakers. This is my first mock draft where we actually officially know that the Pelicans did not keep this pick. They pushed their pick back to 2025, as I expected this entire process. I've been mocking for the Lakers, and the Lakers 17th overall. One thing that I've been constantly saying that this roster needs is another big man. They need someone who can go toe-to-toe with some of the best big men in the Western Conference, and just providing more sheer size, athleticism, rim protection, and defensive maneuverability, the better. You look at some of the best teams in the Western Conference, the Minnesota Timberwolves, they have a lot of size. The Dallas Mavericks have prioritized size, getting Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively in the last 12 months. The Denver Nuggets, the team that the Lakers can never beat, win with Nikola Jokic, the best center in the league. The teams that are really, really tough to beat in the Western Conference right now all have reliable size. And the Lakers, I think, have been a day late and a dollar short on providing that around LeBron James and Anthony Davis. They've been reliant on bad players. Jackson Hayes, someone who was not even wanted anymore in New Orleans. He's not fitting the bill here for the Lakers. Yeah, sometimes Jackson Hayes throws down cool dunks. He's not a good center. I think the Lakers need someone with some real defensive versatility, flexibility, and above-the-rim lob play like they had in 2020 with Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee. 17th overall of the Los Angeles Lakers selecting center Yves Missi from Baylor, one of the most athletic players in this year's draft. He is relatively raw, newer to basketball, has only been playing for, I think, 5 to 6 years, but he is somebody who could really change the dynamic of this Lakers team with his ability to put his head above the rim on both ends of the floors, block shots, protect the paint, but also be an elite rim roller, lob finisher. The Lakers and Rob Pelinka never value spacing. I'll never understand why. They don't put very reliable shooting around Anthony Davis, LeBron James. They just never do. But the reality here is that they're going to value size. And I think if they found the right blend, they would look at LeBron as a true point guard. They would put 2 shooting guards around him, basically, with Anthony Davis and Yves Missi. Some form of 3-and-D players around LeBron, Missi, and Davis, I think, would be a really tremendous roster construction. Instead, they have D'Angelo Russell. I'm not going to get too much into that. Don't like him as a player. But 17th overall, Yves Missi, I just think fits a lot of the things that the Lakers are lacking. You can use him at the level of the screen, and I think it gives you another matchup option where if you're playing Nikola Jokic, you could put Missi on Jokic at times. You could blitz Jamal Murray, have Anthony Davis come over as a roam man and pick up Jokic as the short roller. You could also flip those matchups where you have Anthony Davis on Jokic and you don't leave the body of Jokic and you instead use Yves Missi as a helper off of Aaron Gordon. I could see the Lakers really maximizing Yves Missi with their current roster construction, assuming LeBron James comes back into the fold there for the Lakers. Yves Missi, I think, does make a ton of sense. If the Lakers go with the center on draft night, some people are going to say, whoa, wait, why? They're going to, point to some of the spacing concerns, but I do think it makes a lot of sense for what they need still defensively to guard some of the best teams in the NBA. Pick number 18, the Orlando Magic here on the board. Now, this is one thing for Orlando, and I've been, every time I put together a mock draft, I spend multiple hours thinking through every possible scenario. It's an all-day process for me, it really is, because not only am I thinking about it between, so after I record my last one, I'm sitting here and thinking about my mock for the next week or so before I record another one and post another one, but I'm also thinking all day long about, okay, well, this is what I've been doing. Am I right about this? Am I wrong about this? Obviously, I read all your guys' comments. And one thing I think, just looking at my overall mocks this year, I've been very guard hyper-focused for the Magic. And while I think that's one of their biggest needs and something that they still should look to address, they also did draft Anthony Black last year. And they have cap space. Maybe they have a different plan of attack to address the guard spot. on their roster. So I don't want to mock a guard in this mock draft here today. Instead, I'm going to mock forward Tristan de Silva from Colorado, who has a little bit of Kyle Anderson in his game, the way he moves, the way he operates as a facilitator, but he's also a way more reliable jump shooter. He has good positional size, can really stretch the floor a bit, can play make off the bounce. I think that's one of the values for him. Now, he is going to be a little turnover prone right now. I think he leaves his feet a little too prematurely as a passer, probably makes up his mind before he really knows what is going to be or isn't going to be open. There is going to be a little bit of a learning curve for Orlando here with Tristan de Silva, but that's okay. I think Jett Howard is somebody who can slate into the rotation next year, give them some more shooting. We'd probably see Tristan de Silva most frequently with the Lakeland Magic playing for their G League affiliate, but over time I think he could really carve out a niche role with this roster. You think about Joe Ingles and the value that he played for Orlando at times. You're getting a younger version of that, not really the same player, not really the same makeup at all. But I do think just from an overall shooting, playmaking standpoint, Tristan de Silva does have a decent amount to add into the current roster. And one thing that Jamal Mosley's done a very great job of is building a very good competitive team defense without a ton of elite defensive pieces. Now, he does have Jonathan Isaac, who is, in my opinion, the best defensive player in the world when he's on the floor, when he's healthy. He's probably the only player in the league that I actually trust to guard 1 through 5 on any given night against any given matchup. He can guard anybody. You also have Jalen Suggs, who's an all-defense caliber player. So they do have great defensive players, but it's not like their roster is loaded with them, right? They don't have super elite rim protectors. They don't have a vast collection of elite point-of-attack defenders. What they have is a very good team defensive construct with some very good defensive players in that mix as well. Tristan de Silva, one of the big concerns I have for him is his team defense. How does he fit in filling gaps? How does he work as someone is he going to be athletic enough to close out onto other players? There are some concerns I have about de Silva, but I think if there's a coach and a team to figure it out, it's Jamal Mosley with the Orlando Magic. Getting him 18th overall, I think, would be a really good selection, and someone who, yes, he's not a guard, but he has some playmaking skills to him. He can shoot, he can space the floor a bit, and I think he still fits schematically into what Orlando needs to add to their roster. Pick number 19, we are on to the Toronto Raptors. This pick is the first asset that they will have back in return from the Pascal Siakam trade in terms of draft compensation. And with this pick, I think upside makes some sense for Toronto. Now, they did get Emmanuel Quickley, who is a restricted free agent. They will keep him. He will be in Toronto long term. But I think just going for some upside here, getting a player who can maybe become another core piece for them in that backcourt would be very interesting and dynamic. 19th overall of the Toronto Raptors selecting guard Carlton Carrington from Pittsburgh. And this is kind of an interesting fit. And to be honest, the fit's a little clunky. But if you look at Toronto's roster right now, I can't tell how much they're operating based off of fit. I don't think that their pieces all fit together super smoothly. But what I do think that they have done, and what Masai Ujiri has really done, is in his trades, he's valued getting raw talent and players who he could either flip later for trades, think like Bruce Brown, or players who have some real pedigree to them, someone like RJ Barrett. Carlton Carrington doesn't necessarily have the pedigree, but if you look at how he performed this year for Pittsburgh, the role that he was in, the responsibilities he had for that team's offense, and the rebounding work that he did, he's just going to be a pretty reliable, good player, I think. Drafting him here, 19th overall for Toronto, you get a player who, yes, again, the fit is a little clunky, maybe a little questionable. I still think overall he's a talented piece, a talented player who can make this Raptors team better long term. I think everything that Toronto does should be long term focused, especially now that they have sent their pick to the Spurs this year, the protected pick that was top 6. They have their own future basically under control. It's okay to bottom out for a few years. It's okay to not have the best fit roster currently. Getting upside, getting talent, I think should be the end goal here for Toronto in this draft, and they get it here 19th with Carlton Carrington. Pick number 20, we have the Cleveland Cavaliers here now. This team just needs more shooting. I think with all of the questions about the roster, the safest thing to mock for them, each and every mock draft I do, is shooting, floor spacing, someone who can stretch the floor, shoot, cost-controlled contracts, who can work off of other talented players, because the Cavs do have a lot of talent on their roster. I have them going with guard Jacoby Walter here. The name of his game is shooting, but I think the combine helped him a lot too. Measured in very, very well with a significantly plus wingspan and about 6'7.5", I think his wingspan measured in at. He's a 6'4" guard. And I think if you look at the way this team has been built, they paid Max Strus, they paid George Niang, they have Sam Merrill. They've been really valuing the importance of shooting around their core. And I think at times we've seen the benefits of that. Strus has had some insane moments. George Niang's had his moments as well as a shooter. I think getting a young shooter in the building, someone who has, I think, the upside defensively that some of those other guys maybe don't, especially Niang and Merrill, this is where Jacoby Walter, I think, could really make some long-term sense. He's not going to be a stopper. He's not going to be an elite defender, but the extra length and size that he provides in the backcourt probably just makes him a little bit more playable alongside one of Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell. Whoever is there in Cleveland long-term, we'll see, but I think Jacoby Walter just does make a good deal of sense long-term. Pick number 21, we're on to the New Orleans Pelicans now, and with this pick, I think the Pelicans have a few different options, and this is going to be one that's met with some skepticism, some criticism, but you guys have to hear me out on it. 21st overall of the New Orleans Pelicans, selecting center Zach Edey from Purdue. And I already can hear people typing on their keyboard saying, oh my gosh, Zach Edey's going to eat up the whole paint and he's not going to be able to fit with Zion Williamson. First of all, you guys don't understand how big the paint is, okay? If you're commenting that, you need to look at an aerial overhead view of a basketball floor with players on it. Someone like Zach Edey, who has tremendous touch anywhere from 3 to 10 feet away from the hoop, that's a long, very long space of area. Like 7 feet of distance is not close. And one guy, it's hard to guard 7 feet of space if you're one dude. Now you think about the paint being as wide as it is. If Zion Williamson is attacking down the left lane line and Zach Edey's rolling into the pocket, one center cannot guard both of those guys. And that's the benefit of getting Edey here. He's a phenomenal screen setter. He's a great roller. He has tremendous hands, and he could really fit well off of Zion Williamson. And if you're doubting that, go watch a James Harden Ivica Zubac pick and roll. As James Harden's aged, he's lost his ability to finish above the rim. He's kind of reliant on his floater, and yet he still is super dynamic with Zubac in the pick and roll game because of Zubac's hands, his touch around the rim, and just where he gets to positionally. I think Zach Edey alongside Zion Williamson, who puts a little bit more rim pressure, and I shouldn't even say a little bit more, a lot more rim pressure than James Harden. Zion Williamson, if he does ever get cut off, turning and seeing a huge 7'4" Zach Edey sitting in the pocket, you could lob it up to him, you could fit it in on bounce pass because he's got great hands to catch it. He can be your play finisher around that construct. He rolls extremely hard. He can finish above the rim, below the rim. Zach Edey is a tremendous get here for New Orleans. I've been labeled as a Zach Edey hater. I don't really understand why. I feel like I call it how it is. There are some real flaws in his game. But for New Orleans, a team that already has an elite defense with a lot of really great perimeter defenders, imagine getting someone who could be a real rim deterrent. Yes, he's not going to be guarding out in space. Yes, there's some limitations with him. You're going to put him in drop coverage almost exclusively. The Pelicans have the collection of lengthy defenders around that to really swarm the perimeter, challenge shots on the perimeter, and then, oh, by the way, if you beat them off the dribble, you have a 7'4" gigantic human being as your backside rim protector. I think the Pelicans, this would be a great pick for them. I think this is a no-brainer decision, to be honest with you, where if New Orleans takes Zach Edey, a player that I'm skeptical on, this is like an A grade for me. This is like, wow, they actually understand how he would fit on their roster. He would be tremendous around Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum as a screen setter and roll guy. And I think with Zion Williamson, there's not a team in the league that is equipped to guard both Zach Edey's 7'4" frame at the rim while having to pick up Zion Williamson attacking downhill as well. And guess what? If you're the Pelicans, and one of the big things you maybe aren't super thrilled about is how often teams put their centers on Zion Williamson. Well, guess what? You're going to not put your center on Zach Edey? Good luck with that. It becomes a really dynamic combination there in New Orleans with two freakishly gifted players in completely different ways. Number 22, we have the Phoenix Suns here now. Very, very likely this pick gets traded on draft night. But in the event that it doesn't, who could the Suns look to add? I have them going with guard Isaiah Collier here in this mock draft. Now, there has been an ongoing dispute in that organization. Coaches have wanted guards. Frank Vogel was very vocal about that, wanting a point guard. Mike Budenholzer is already saying that he wants a point guard there to maximize Booker, Beal, and Durant. And then the ownership, Matt Ishbia, someone who has not done a good job as an owner, in my opinion, has one playoff series win to show for it, and they didn't win a single game this year against the Timberwolves in the playoffs. He doesn't want a point guard. So who are you going to listen to? The coach who's won an NBA championship in Mike Budenholzer, or an owner who hasn't really done anything good for the team yet? I hope that they listen to the coach and they draft a point guard, because Mike Budenholzer knows what he's doing. Isaiah Collier is a player who could really give Phoenix an interesting ball handler. He does a very good job creating advantages. Now, I've been very skeptical of Collier in a lot of my mock drafts. I'm going to stay away from doing that in this one. I'm going to focus on the positives of his game. He's got a tremendous frame to him. He's really, really strong. He can finish through contact. He can knock bigs off of their spot. I think that'll be something that's very important for his finishing upside at the NBA level, is just being able to leverage and kind of crevice his way into spaces by using his frame, his shoulders, to bump guys out of position and to open up just a little bit of room for him to get some of his below the rim finishes off. And he's also just, again, with that downhill scoring capability, he can use that to play make. If the defense steps in, if you overcommit to helping on him, then all of a sudden he's going to kick the ball out to one of Booker, Beal, Durant. You got to love that outcome if you're Phoenix. So I think Collier could be a really tremendous pickup for a team, especially a team like Phoenix that's already loaded with perimeter talent. This is one of the spots where I think Collier could really fit well and actually have a really positive impact early in his career. So I like this quite a bit for the Phoenix Suns. 23, we have the Milwaukee Bucks. Mike Budenholzer's former team. Obviously, they've had a coaching carousel themselves since letting go of Budenholzer, but now 23rd overall. They're at a spot where maybe they just take best player available or some talent that I think that they could use on their roster. So I have them going with center Daron Holmes II. One thing that I think has been pretty evident watching Milwaukee the last couple of years in the playoffs, they just need more athleticism and more front court athleticism, most specifically. In the playoffs, Bobby Portis and Brook Lopez both really struggled against Indiana. The athleticism of Pascal Siakam and Miles Turner just really challenged that team. So I think getting someone like Daron Holmes II, who's a bit more athletic than Brook Lopez, just a little bit more comfortable defending out in space, I think would be valuable for them. But then on the offensive end of the floor, listen, Brook Lopez isn't going anywhere. He's going to be the starting center for the Bucks this next year. What does Daron Holmes II provide to Milwaukee then? It provides them another shooting big man, another guy who can pick and pop, fit along Giannis Antetokounmpo in that way. When Giannis is your primary ball handler in a lot of pick and roll action, you can have Holmes either roll or pop. It gives you another dynamic big man like Brook Lopez offensively, what he's blossomed into. Daron Holmes II projects to be a similar type of offensive big man who can sit at the top of the key, knock down shots, can also space into the corners and on the wings a bit. He has a lot of volume as a screen setter at the college game. And then next to Damian Lillard, he provides some of that same type of upside either as a popper or as a roller. So that's where the value is here for Milwaukee, getting another dynamic big man who's a bit more athletic and obviously a lot younger than Brook Lopez currently is. Pick 24, the New York Knicks here now. They have back-to-back selections. And this player's fallen a little bit in this mock draft, and every time I mock him, I just can't really tell where to put him. He's one of those real tweeners for me in this draft of, could I see him going in the late lottery? I could see a team liking him enough to take him there. Could I see him falling into the mid to late 20s? I could, because for me, the skill set, he's not a center, he's not a true power forward. He's Kyle Filipowski from Duke. And listen, Kyle Filipowski, there's a lot of things to like. He's got a very dynamic scoring range. He shoots some threes. He can pick and roll. He can pick and pop. He's comfortable handling the ball. He's worked out of isolation a ton in his 2 years at the college level. He's operated as a pick and roll ball handler. He played with Derek Lively, was throwing lobs to Lively, played as a lob finisher himself, played as a play finisher, as a cutter, as a driver. He's done everything, basically. The question is, does he do everything well enough to be good in the NBA? And that's where I'm a little bit more skeptical. I think for a team like New York, who doesn't have a ton of drastic flaws right now, a ton of drastic needs, taking someone who's pretty well-rounded, who can be a little bit of a gap filler for them off the bench. Now listen, he's probably like their 9th, 10th guy if they take him. He's not going to play a lot for a Tom Thibodeau team. That's just the reality, especially early in his career. But he's got skilled size. If Mitch Robinson gets hurt, or if Julius Randle gets hurt, if Isaiah Hartenstein gets hurt moving forward, it gives you one extra guy in the front court to play some extra minutes. Can you give him 15 to 20 minutes a night and have him kind of play in a certain different kind of number of ways for you to fill some of the things you're missing from those injuries? That's where I think Filipowski finds some value, especially for New York in this situation. Now, I think Filipowski could turn into a good player. I don't want to sit here and say that I think Filipowski's terrible and no team should take him. I don't believe that. I think he is a first-round level player in this year's draft. I think there's going to be teams that should look at taking him because of his upside as a shooter, his upside as a floor-spacing big man. That alone will keep him in the first round. I think ultimately for New York, though, getting Filipowski 24th overall operates more as a gap-filling thing than an actual key piece of their roster going forward if they don't trade this pick. Pick number 25, the Knicks, again here, like I said, this is their own selection, and with this selection, we got kind of their gap filler already, someone who would play in case of injuries. The Knicks don't have all of these minutes to go around. They don't have a ton of open roster spots. They don't have a ton of rotation minutes to give away. This is a project pick for the New York Knicks, but I think this is one that Knicks fans would really, really like. That is forward Ryan Dunn from Virginia. Arguably the best defensive prospect in this year's draft, and honestly, I don't even know if it's arguable. I think he just flat out might be. He is a tremendous defensive playmaker, but what has always impressed me about his defensive playmaking capabilities when he gets steals and blocks, he does it as a byproduct of being in the right position in front of his man most typically. When he gets pickpocket steals, when he gets blocks at the rim, he is typically already cutting off drives, staying in front of the primary ball handler, making life really difficult for them to score the basketball to begin with. There are players who showcase their athleticism and make wow plays after getting beat or after being out of position. Ryan Dunn makes his wow plays while in position. That's one of the things that really stands out to me. Now you might say, okay, you're really loving this guy. Why is he not a lottery pick? Why is he not a top 15, 20 pick? He can't score, he can't shoot, he can't play make. Okay, he can finish at the rim a bit. That's really the one thing he does well at the NBA level, is he's going to be a transition scorer. He's going to be an advantage play finisher. And the reality is that's hard to find ways to win with, because in the playoffs, they're going to segue off of him. They're going to completely disrespect him. And do you want him shooting wide open threes? At this point of his career, probably not. He was terrible at the combine as a shooter. So this is a draft, and hey, Westchester, you're going to have a new forward to play at the G League affiliate level for a while, because Ryan Dunn's probably 2 years away from having a real impact on an NBA team. But for New York, a team that doesn't need minutes right now, they don't need a rotation player right now, I could see Tom Thibodeau loving a player like Ryan Dunn with his defensive acumen. It's about putting together skill sets for him, letting him grow as an offensive player. And in the G League, that doesn't mean having him handle the ball. That means having him play out of the corner, attacking closeouts, and playing the way you would want him to at the NBA level once he's finally there. I think the Knicks, this is a draft and develop strategy, one that they don't have roster time for him right now anyway. I think it makes sense to take a project player like Ryan Dunn if they do keep this pick as well. Pick number 26, the Washington Wizards here now. This pick comes from the Los Angeles Clippers through the Oklahoma City Thunder, part of the Daniel Gafford trade. And the Wizards here at this spot, after going with Zaccharie, Risacher, second overall, they're in a spot where it's just about taking maybe another upside swing here. Another guy who can create offense, play off the bounce a little bit. And I have them going with guard Nikola here from Mega Mies, another Mega Basket graduate here, if you'd want to say. Now, he's undecided currently on if he's going to stay in the NBA draft or not at the time I'm recording this, but at the combine, he did measure in at 6'7" without shoes on as a guard with real playmaking feel, playmaking skill set. He's going to be an impressive prospect to keep our eyes on. Now, there's moments where some of the decision making is a little questionable. He kind of settles for bad jump shots at times. And really with the flair that he has to his passing game, sometimes that gets a little wild and wonky. Sometimes, he's trying to fit a pass into a tight window that there's no business in fitting that pass into. So there is a lot of room for growth here for Jurisic yet as a prospect. But I think for Washington, you've already gotten your kind of safe long-term building piece in this draft with Risacher. So maybe drafting someone who has some real upside to grow into, blossom into as a player, could make some really good sense for them as well. Jurisic I like as a prospect. I like his game, and I think he could turn into a really big-time steal if everything goes right in his development. Again, that's a huge if. I'm not saying it will. I'm not saying it won't, but I'm really not sure it will. Kind of reminds me of Leandro Bolmaro a little bit. I think a better version of that. He's a little bit more physical. He's a bit bigger. I think a more sound off-ball skill set as well. So Bolmaro's not the best comp for him, but he's kind of fun to watch like Leandro Bolmaro was as a draft prospect. I think just about a half decade ago or so now at this point. Pick number 27, the Minnesota Timberwolves, talking about Leandro Bolmaro. That's the team that got him on draft night. He did not have a very long career there in Minnesota, but 27th overall. Now the Wolves, obviously, what a great season for them, first of all. I have to say that. Everyone's going to be upset at them. Inside the NBA on TNT was completely roasting this team in the Western Conference Finals. I just want to point out the player that was sitting in the broadcast there, Draymond Green, criticizing Rudy Gobert about how he can't play in the playoffs. Well, that guy didn't play in the playoffs. Where was Draymond Green in the postseason? We didn't see him, did we? So that's a little ironic. Just have to leave that there. But 27th overall, the Minnesota Timberwolves select forward/guard Jalen Tyson from California. And welcome to the first round mocks here, Jalen Tyson. I've gotten a lot of criticism from people saying, how do you not have Jalen Tyson in the first round? I think I think there's a good chance he goes in the first round. I just haven't exactly known where to mock him. And the other issue with it is I'm not certain that he is a guaranteed first-round pick either. And a lot of these guys here between 20 and 30 aren't, right? Like anyone from 20 to 30 could go all the way down to 35, 40, 45, possibly. So especially when we're still over 2 or 3 weeks away from the draft yet at this point in time, like there's still a lot of maneuverability for some of these prospects, the workouts that they're going on, those kinds of things. So someone like Jalen Tyson here, now getting into the first round, very possible I could keep him in my first round mocks all the way through the end of the process here. I do like his game though, someone who can create off the dribble a bit. About half of his shots came at the rim. Some of them came off the ball with him cutting, finding just open space in the defense. When the defense shifts, he just kind of seems to find himself in the right spot a lot of the time. And for Minnesota, a team that's slated to lose Kyle Anderson from his exit interviews, it sounds like he has played his last game with the Minnesota Timberwolves. He said he would like to be back in Minnesota, but looking at their cap situation, it's very likely he's not. So Jalen Tyson does make a very good deal of sense for them because he can also shoot the ball relatively well. Shot a lot off the dribble. I think California did a good job generating their offense to get him open looks, whether that was coming off of double screens or pin downs, whether that was coming off of horns looks, like both on and off the ball. He was coming off a lot of screens, finding himself in open space a good amount. Minnesota's not going to have him play that way a ton. Now, they do set a lot of screens there in Minnesota, but it's typically for Anthony Edwards or Mike Conley. At times other players, but mostly those two guys. So Jalen Tyson's going to have to find other ways to be creative, but his floor spacing and finding himself in the right spot at the right time will be an important trait for Minnesota, a team that still needs more offensive juice for sure. Pick 28, the Denver Nuggets here now. And in the last couple of drafts, we've seen them take players who are probably ready to impact games. Julian Strawther, someone who is an older college prospect. You think about Hunter Tyson, who has a lot of length and size and shooting touch to him. They've drafted players who they hope can become role players and consistent contributors as 6th, 7th, or 8th guys in their rotation. They did take an upside swing on Peyton Watson. I think that's going to hit pretty well. I was shocked when they did it in the first round. I just did not think Peyton Watson was going to be a first-round pick with how bad his freshman season was at UCLA. But credit to Calvin Booth and company there in Denver, because Peyton Watson seems like he's going to end up becoming a pretty solid player in the NBA. Very athletic, obviously, and can defend. But for the Nuggets here, I think it's about finding another player. We've looked at center for them in a lot of the past mocks. The reality is they sometimes just don't care. They just don't care about the backup center spot. If they did, they wouldn't just have DeAndre Jordan as their backup center. So maybe they're going to go with another wing type here who can shoot it, which is why I have them going forward Johnny Furphy in this mock draft, 28th overall. I do think he makes a good deal of sense from his overall skill set. Finishes at the rim well, shoots the three ball well as a spot-up guy. He's not a big-time movement shooter, but I think one thing about Denver, watching them play, that two-man game between Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic is so centric to their offense that the other guys around that typically are kind of stationary or spotting up in specific locations. Obviously, Aaron Gordon works the baseline really well. MPJ is a pretty good off-ball movement shooter. So you don't need Johnny Furphy to be your movement guy. What you would want him to be is a stationary knockdown catch-and-shoot player. The Nuggets role players really struggled in the playoffs to hit shots. Christian Brown specifically struggled, and then they relied on Justin Holiday to be kind of their shooter for them off the bench. So Johnny Furphy finds probably instant minutes in that kind of role and finds some pretty early success as well, if I had to guess, playing off of Nikola Jokic and company there in the Mile High Stadium and Ball Arena there. 29, we have the Utah Jazz back on the clock. Remember, they went with guard Nikola Topic earlier. Now this pick, 29th, this pick's been traded a bunch, by the way. Got traded to Toronto, traded back to Utah. This pick has been all over the place, but here it is now. Cam Christie, guard out of Minnesota. And listen, I talked about play finishers and how important that would be to have around Nikola, who they selected 10th overall. They get another play finisher here, but this one's a high volume 3-point shooter, a high volume shooter in general, and a pretty good shooter. Shot over 40% from 3 in his freshman season at Minnesota. And yes, you probably recognize this guy a little bit. This is the brother of Max Christie, Lakers guard, who Lakers fans perennially want to see play 20 minutes a game. Cam Christie, though, can really shoot the ball. He can fill it up. He can shoot pull-up jump shots. He likes those types of looks. And for Utah, a team that already has a lot of interior size and a lot of interior play finishing, which we've already highlighted in this video, Cam Christie, he's not an interior play finisher, he's a perimeter play finisher. And he also has a little bit of that upside to create for himself in late shot clock situations. So this isn't a home run pick for them. This isn't a, wow, this guy has a ton of upside. This is a, hey, it's a wing who can shoot the ball a bit, space the floor for us, open things up maybe a little bit more for Markkanen and Topic and for Kessler and John Collins, if Collins is still there in Utah. This is one of those where it's like very safe for Utah to add, and he doesn't really like drastically change the dynamic of this team, but he just provides, you know, kind of ancillary spacing and a little bit more floor court balance for the roster. Pick 30, the Boston Celtics. Final pick here of this first round mock draft. I've been having a lot of fun. I hope you guys have as well. 30th overall, I have the Boston Celtics drafting guard AJ Mitchell. And one thing I've been saying about the Celtics for the last 24 months now or so, they're just the smartest team in the league. They have the best front office. Brad Stevens is an absolute genius. The guy just does not lose a trade. He makes genius decisions. I think that they are well ahead of the NBA CBA. I think they understand how the CBA works and how to take advantage of the CBA. And if you have an owner who's willing to spend, you can really beat other teams in this race by spending, not saving money, not getting out of the aprons. You need to blow past the aprons, because when you're past the aprons, guess what? You can't trade for more salary than you're sending out. So having expensive contracts to trade gives you flexibility to take back smaller contracts or to take back another big contract while not having to really screw your depth over. And that's where Boston's going to do this right. They're going to draft smart, good players. They already drafted Jordan Walsh last year in the second round, who I like a lot. I think he's going to have a long-term career as a defensive-minded prospect. And I think AJ Mitchell specifically here for Boston could be a long-term home run pick as a backup guard for them. Coming off the bench, they just extended Drew Holiday. Derek White's going to get a long-term extension. I think AJ Mitchell is the perfect backup guard in today's NBA. Can create for himself off the bounce, can create for others with his scoring gravity, the pressure he puts on a defense. I think he's a tremendous player. It's very possible AJ Mitchell goes in the second round on draft night. To me, that would be unfathomable. I don't think that should actually happen. For me, I would take him very, very high. I think a team like Orlando at 18 should take him. If it was a mock of what I would do, AJ Mitchell would have been off the board a long time ago. But it's not what I would do, it's what I expect teams to do. And if AJ Mitchell falls to Boston here, 30th overall, if the Celtics don't trade out of this pick, which I think there's a very good chance they do, if they don't trade out of this pick, AJ Mitchell's the obvious no-brainer decision for them, getting them another guy who can dribble, pass, shoot. It's at the heart of what Boston does. All of their players are good because they can all dribble, pass, shoot. They can all play off of each other because of that. They get another guy here in AJ Mitchell who just really fits that type of mold, and a player who just makes a ton of sense for the Celtics. Thank you all so much for watching. Really appreciate you guys. Make sure you go give us a follow on Twitter. Links in the description for that. Again, thanks to today's sponsor, OddsJam. And then also, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy. Really appreciate each and every one of you, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.